created a way through Jesus Christ that we can all be forgiven where we fall short. And that is who our Creator is. Therefore, if we're created in the image of God, we too have that capacity to forgive completely, wholeheartedly, unconditionally. And so Wesley would say, every time you forgive someone, like that continues to that experience of forgiving, of letting go, that transforms and aligns your heart with God's heart. And that's kind of where I was, Chris. Like, I could tell I really had this heaviness about it, and I just didn't want that heaviness anymore. And, you know, years and years and years ago, when I was on my Emmaus walk, I guess that's been about 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yikes.
That's a long time.
I know, that's a long time. But I can remember just as vividly as probably you can on your journey.
Right. Mine was in March.
Exactly. But I feel like when something transformational like this happens in your life,
right,
you're forever changed. And it doesn't mean that you don't encounter
I agree.
new
I went through the same thing.
wins.
We can't go into many details about this Emmaus walk, but I went through the same thing, and it was life changing for me.
Yeah. Well, and that is the thing. You know, I went on my walk at a time. I do believe God has us there when we're supposed to be there.
Exactly. I believe that 100%.
Yeah. And so I went on this walk, and I had this heavy load of unforgiveness, where I felt like I'd been wrong. There hadn't really been an opportunity to work out that. And so it just kind of hung over me. And God wanted something different for me. And I'm so glad. He wants something different for you too. He wants something different for every one of our listeners than to have the weight of unforgiveness. And so one of the special services they have invites you to, if there's something that's weighing on you, if there's something that you have not given to God, then you get an opportunity to do that. And they have it done. It's done in a very tangible way. And so you can picture that moment where you're actually giving this
mine right now
to God. I mean, and here's the thing. If you've got unforgiveness, if you're praying about it, you may not have the special service, or you may not be at Emmaus, but that does not keep you from doing this. And if you need something tangible, go get a couch cushion or a bed pillow or a spoon. I don't know, whatever you want to get. Go get something. And literally, just sometimes you have to have something tangible that you can actually see it moving.
Hold in your hand or
yep.
whatever.
And I've done this with pillows, is why I can say this. I've had to pray about unforgiveness and just say, hey, Jesus, what do I need to forgive? And as things would come to me that I needed to forgive for this person or about a hurt that was caused by someone, I literally would take the pillow and say, okay, Jesus, I'm giving you ABC. I'm just giving this to you. And I would name that unforgiveness. I would name whatever that is specifically and just, give it. And so some people need that. I'm one of those people. Maybe I'm just harder to forgive. Maybe I hold on to things more because I'm a control freak.
It's effective. It works.
So, I kind of need sometimes that tangible side of things, but any of us can do that at any time. You don't have to have a special whatever, because guess what? God is with you, and God wants to take that off of you. God doesn't want you to have to carry the weight of unforgiveness. So I invite you to experience that and to be transformed. And as Wesley say, that experience will align your heart with God's heart. And Wesley would also call us to remember that community, being in community with other people, small groups, or church, some place that you can have other folks say, hey, how is it with your soul? Like, how are things going with you? And help you to remember, and even this community we have right here on this podcast. See, This is a community.
It is.
And so Chris and I come back to you and we ask you things like, well, hey, have you been practicing listening prayer? We're going to ask you from time to time, hey, how's that forgiveness going?
Yeah, how's that forgiveness going there?
And so to be with others who will invite you to that place of accountability, like, you're right, God does want me to give this up, whatever this is, and God wants me to forgive. And you've found a place right here where we're going to ask you those kind of hard questions from time to time.
Yes.
So know they're coming, and just go ahead and practice that unforgiveness. And here's the truth. There are times, it's happened maybe to most, if not all of us, that we really do want to forgive. But maybe there's still more that we haven't kind of rooted up, dug up, that we're holding on to about this person or the wound. And so in our best effort to give it up, there are times when we go back and we go get that pillow and we put it back in our lap.
Yep, go get it back.
But I'm just going to tell you, just don't do it. Just leave it there. And if you have picked it back up, well, go put it back down.
One of the things I try to do is, if you know the person really well, try to understand why they are the way they are, or what kind of background they had. For example, my biological father just gave up on us. I can't even say that he struggled with addiction. I don't even think he tried not to. But I understand that he had an addiction. So, and whenever I started struggling with addiction, I found understanding and I found forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate your sharing that, because I think there are people out there listening that need to know that we often hold people to a specific, like an expectation. Like, this is how so-and-so is a dad or a mom.
Right.
So that's what I expect from you. And as a child, that is perfectly reasonable. But as you get older, and you start to go through things in life, you realize that sometimes there are reasons that people aren't able to live into that expectation. Right. And that still, we're wounded, because especially if things happen to us as a child, or a parent's not there the way we need them to be there, or we expect them to be there. Like, there is hurt, and it is hard to let that go, because I think we feel like, well, they owe us. But I love that you shared the way that when you experienced your addictive behavior, when you experienced that, you had eyes to see him through a very human lens. And that gave you an opportunity. It opened a door for you to extend forgiveness and to be aware that his not showing up for you was not okay. Right? Because that's what a dad's supposed to do. But it allowed you to actually not have to carry the weight of unforgiveness.
Right.
Because once again, that's between you and God. You don't have to be weighed down by unforgiveness because somebody else initiated a hurt.
Right. Now, I'll take it even further to where whenever I was struggling with my addiction, I found myself neglecting my children. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. Well, I do think the more I learn about addictive behaviors and addiction, the more I realize it is a very complex thing that most of us know very little about. And so you're right. There is something to the fact when you can see people through a different lens. You sometimes can feel more at ease about that place of forgiveness. But I'm going to push back a little, because that's why I'm here, and say that, those people that are hardest to forgive, or that have wounded us the most or the longest ago, like, that's a great place to just offer forgiveness, not necessarily to them, but offer that forgiveness to God. It is an offering to God. And so you don't have to be weighed down, even if, like I said, even if they deserve the unforgiveness, even if they don't deserve things. I feel like that's exactly what we talked about when we looked at, especially those New Testament passages that, Jesus modeled for us. So anyway, I think there's one last little thing I was going to talk about, and that is this forgiveness versus forgetting. And we touched on it a little, but I just wanted to make sure I touched on it a little more, because I feel like that is, I feel like we kind of need to just make sure people do understand. And in working with someone, they were ready to forgive a lot of things that people had done to them. And they were really making such great strides about forgiving. But then it got to a place that someone had hurt their child, and they weren't ready in that moment to forgive someone who'd hurt their child. I think sometimes it's easier to forgive people who've injured us than to forgive people that have injured those we love and care about. But God continues to make a way for us to figure that out too. Even the hardest things to forgive, you're not letting the person off the hook for what they've done. You're not blessing it. You're not approving it. You're not condoning it. And you're not letting your loved one down by forgiving them. It really, because they're never even maybe going to hear you say you're forgiven. This is not about the other person.
This is not.
This is 100% about the way that you're trying to align your heart with God's and not carry this weight of unforgiveness. And so the Bible, it's pretty clear, I think, throughout Old and New Testament of examples where forgiving others is essential, like to our spiritual growth, to our peace. And, but the reality is that forgetting sometimes comes through a process. Like, we can forgive people, and if you forgive something, it won't haunt you in the middle of the night, even if you remember it. And I know this for a fact because, I told you about having this unforgiveness that I had to work through. Like, I have not forgotten what I forgave.
Right.
But I'm not hurt or wounded or even upset when I remember it anymore.
Right.
And so you may not fully forget what you've forgiven, but when you've really forgiven, then it doesn't bring you back to a place of hurt.
Right. And I'll give an example. My first wife cheated on me. It destroyed me. It took me a long time to forgive. I retaliated. Mm-hmm. It did not fix the problem. I finally forgave, and now I think about it now, and it doesn't hurt. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think
I just hope she can forgive me for the retaliation.
Well, I like that we can just speak from the heart here. That's what this podcast is about, is just being real.
Right.
And saying...
And I'm a little more candid because I'm an open book almost.
Yeah.
Not completely open, but a lot of my stuff is a matter of public record too. So.
Well, absolutely. I know what you mean. And I think most people will tell you I'm pretty much an open book.